special called meeting on one topic, so I hopefully won't be in this till 10. I have a hearing with a hearing officer at 10.
The January 14th special call meeting of the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Commission. I want to welcome my fellow commissioners. I see a bunch of smiling faces this morning. I hope everybody's doing well and avoiding the Omicron variant of COVID. Please be sure that you take precautions in your daily lives to avoid those. Before we get into the body of our meeting today, and hopefully it will be a short meeting, I'm going to ask the commissioner to lead us in invocation, and then I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance following the invocation. Commissioner Storm.
You would please join me in prayer. Father God in heaven, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to have fellowship and spend time together. And we believe that you created the heavens, the land and the sea. And we know that you have control over all things. And we thank you for the many blessings of the Commonwealth and the outdoors that we love and we cherish. Lord, we ask you to be with many people in our state right now that are suffering from sickness and illness. Lord, a special blessing we ask on those that have suffered from the severe storms we had here in the state. We thank you for all things that you do for us. We thank you for your care. It's in your son Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Gentlemen, would you rise with me and perform the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated, gentlemen. Thank you. Again, I want to welcome everybody. I believe we're still waiting for Mr. Farrell to come on board. So we've got just a couple of minutes here of taking care of some work before we need to get into the body of business. So maybe we'll get him connected here in just a minute. Again, I want to welcome all the commissioners, those stakeholders who may be watching with us today. We have a few things to go over that we'll get to here in just a few minutes. Before we start that, I'd like to hear any comments from Commissioner Storm that he'd like to make prior to getting Deputy Commissioner Clark and Lisa Cox on board with talking about today's meeting. But before even that, we're going to have some public comments. Mr. Kelly will be bringing those public comments. Commissioner Storm.
I'll be very brief for the special call meeting, but I want to wish everybody a happy new year. I hope you had a blessed holiday season. Hope you're well. As you all know, we're coming close to license year end, and those licenses expire at the end of February. So we probably won't meet again prior to the expiration of those licenses. I want to thank our valued customers for purchasing hunting and fishing licenses. I hope today that you're healthy and well, and your family and your friends, and I hope you have the opportunity to get out and enjoy the outdoors here in the near future. And as I previously mentioned in the invocation, a lot of people have gone through difficult times with the tornadoes across the state, and I guess I challenge each and every one of you, if there's a circumstance or a situation that we can be helpful with as humans and as a department, by all means, we would like to do that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the many volunteers and employees that served our agency proudly, that went down to help for tornado relief. And also, we had a great deal of employees in Western Kentucky the night of the storm for the CWD efforts. And we were really fortunate that we didn't have anybody hurt, but our staff immediately went to work, and they just shined like I've come to expect here in my time here. So thank you for what you all do. Thank you to the commission for being volunteers and doing what you do to serve the Commonwealth. And I hope you have a blessed day, and thank you for the opportunity to speak, Chairman Kleiner.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I see that Mr. Farrell has joined us. Mr. Farrell, we've checked everybody else's mic. Can you hear me okay, sir? Jerry, we're not hearing you. I'm not hearing you, sir.
Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry about that, guys.
Loud and clear. Good morning, and I'm glad to see you with that seatbelt on this morning while you're driving.
Better safe than sorry. Yes, sir.
Thank you for joining us. We wanted to make sure. So before we get into the business of the day, I'd like Secretary Morgan to take the attendance roll. Mr. Morgan.
Commissioner Floyd,
Here I am.
Commissioner Fisher,
Present.
Commissioner Swallows,
Present.
Commissioner Mackey,
Present.
Commissioner Lillard,
Present.
Commissioner Farrell,
Present.
Commissioner Horn,
Here.
I'm here. Chairman Kleiner,
I'm here too, sir. Thank you.
we have 100% attendance, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Let the record show that we have a full attendance of commissioners at today's meeting. The next part of our agenda is public comments. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kelly about public comments. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman Kleiner. So public comment period ended at 5 o'clock Eastern last night. We received one public comment, and I'll go ahead and read that. It is from Edwin Nybert. It begins, my name is Edwin Nybert. I am past president of the League of Kentucky Sportsmen, past director for the 6th District of the League, a lifetime member of the League, Safari Club, Ducks Unlimited, and Pheasants Forever, lifelong hunter and fisherman and steward of our resources. I am writing today to voice my concerns on the implementation of a third-party vendor to issue and sell licenses to the sportsmen and women for the Commonwealth. I am not necessarily opposed to such a move, as I and many others use them for other states. My concern is that if, as stated by Deputy Commissioner Clark, 60% of all license sales are currently done through the KDFWR website, a very good and navigable website, then why is it necessary to fix a problem that does not exist? Seems to me that it would be easier and much more cost-effective to direct the people to the website and my profile. This is available to all through the modern technology of cell phones without requiring an app. And yes, one must have internet to access both websites and apps. The department then gets to keep all the monies received without the potential of raising our prices yet again. Another issue that is not addressed is what assurances are given that there won't be a failure of platforms resulting in not being able to purchase licenses for any amount of time. This was seen in Wisconsin the day before the modern gun season, where some 80% of non-residents were prevented from buying a license and therefore not able to legally hunt opening day. What redundancies are required by the vendor to ensure this doesn't happen? The auto renewal feature should be an opt-in only process as well. If it is not, and licenses are renewed without consent, this would be a sticky wicket legally and cost us in lawsuits. Good thing we have $27 million in the bank to cover legal expenses. Those questions asked, this is another attempt to subvert the process in which stakeholders are to have a comment period, which has been severely lacking since the abolition of the committees. The subject was broached at the December 3rd commission meeting for the first time to many of our knowledge. Again, following the department guidelines on working groups, where's the working group for this issue? When did they meet? What stakeholders were present for the discussion of the business? And where is the final proposal to come out of the working group to go to the commission for discussion and subsequent action? Where are the minutes of the working group meeting? When and where were the meetings announced for stakeholder participation? The procedural problems here are part and parcel to the absence of working groups, and more so to the absence of stakeholder representation in these groups that are presently meeting. Finally, how is the contract for third-party vendor to be awarded? Done behind closed doors with no transparent bid process, even in retrospect? Will we find after the truth washes out that the bid is awarded through cronyism, nepotism, or no bid at all? Or will it actually be a bid process in the point system currently used by the Commonwealth for RFDs? I await with bated breath to see if the stakeholders are truly as important to our department for anything but our dollars. I will probably die of self-asphyxiation before that truth comes out. Sincerely, Edwin Nybert. So we have department staff, Mr. Chairman, prepared a few answers in response to Mr. Nybert's questions. And be happy to share those in the interest of transparency if you wish.
Continue, please, sir.
Okay. In response to the question, why is it necessary to fix a problem that does not exist? In short, problems do exist with the current operations related to licensing, such as suboptimal customer service as defined by a substantial proportion of customers who expect and are demanding an app and features associated with modern licensing and IT functions. Impracticality of maintaining adequate IT staffing now and into the future, and substantial lost revenue due to an outdated licensing delivery model. These problems have been explained during the discussions on this topic in the 3 previous commission meetings in emails to individual commission members or all, and in the question and answer document compiled for the commission and public in the interest of transparency. In response to the question, what assurances are given that there won't be a failure of platforms resulting in not being able to purchase licenses for any amount of time? What redundancies are required by the vendor to ensure this doesn't happen? Answer, the department has experienced server outages and other issues related to current delivery of licenses that have resulted in significant lost or delayed revenue. In third-party vendor contracts, losses can be recouped through penalties and potentially other means. Pathway redundancies can be required to preclude the possibility of such losses. These are not new issues, and other states have experienced or preemptively addressed these concerns in their operations, procurement, and contracting processes, which the Commonwealth of Kentucky will have the benefit of learning from in its procurement and contracting process. In response to the question, was this business item proposed through a working group? And if not, what process was used to bring it before the commission? Answer, once again, as previously discussed, the Public Relations Committee of the Commission explicitly and publicly discussed in three meetings during 2019 topics of modernization to enhance the experiences of department customers, including potential licensing and app functions and features. Various stakeholders and organization leaders were present at all of these public meetings. Note the focus is on enhancing the customer experience, not solely or even primarily on increasing agency revenue, although sustainable revenue is essential to sustaining quality customer experiences as well. You can view these public meetings using links provided in a timeline of discussions document posted with the agenda for this meeting on the department's website. The Public Relations Committee introduced and discussed this topic publicly at 3 meetings in 2019. February of 2019, May of 2019, and November of 2019. Note that at the November 2019 meeting, the fact that features could not be specified was explicitly discussed, and that a team of staff were working with the Commonwealth Office of Technology and the Finance Cabinet. The commission strongly tasked agency leadership and staff at that time to proceed. Again, stakeholders and organization leaders were present at this meeting and appear to be in favor of pursuing these customer experience enhancements through an RFP for licensing and IT solutions. After considerable research conducted by staff during 2020 and 21, in conjunction with the Commonwealth Office of Technology and the Finance and Administration Cabinet, including a request for information process in 2021, required next steps were identified, including regulation changes that were necessary to allow for a third-party vendor of licenses or permits and related IT solutions. Thus, currently proposed regulation changes were then introduced to the commission following the 3-step business process adopted in January of 2020. The item was presented to the commission as a business item 3 times in 2021, new business item in June of 2021, discussion item in September of 2021, action item December 2021. Because some stakeholders indicated that they just learned of the proposal immediately prior to the December 3rd meeting, the commission tabled the discussion for another month of deliberation pending scheduling of this special called meeting. The timeline of these discussions, including links to the commission videos, is publicly available on the department's website under the calendar of events and the commission meetings page. In response to the question, how is the contract for the third-party vendor to be awarded? Will it actually be a bid process currently used by the Commonwealth for RFPs? Answer, the RFP process will be overseen by the Finance and Administration Cabinet's Office of Procurement Services. When the RFP is finalized, a procurement specialist within Finance, OPS, will be assigned, and that buyer will ensure applicable laws and policies are followed, including handling all communications with bidders and proctoring the bid evaluation process. And that includes the answers to the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for those timely answers to some of Mr. Nybert's questions. And I want to remind the public that they're welcome to send in both comments and questions, which leads me to thank Deputy Commissioner Clark for the countless hours. I believe I can thank him on behalf of the entire commission for the countless hours he has spent on this topic, both answering questions from stakeholders and posting many of those or getting back with those and making them available to the commissioners to share with their stakeholders in their districts who had questions about this process and the legal process of the RFP, as well as some constraints of law that would keep us from doing some of these things in-house. So I want to thank Brian Clark, both personally and on behalf of the commission, for the hours he has spent compiling all this information and posting much of it on the webpage. So thank you, Commissioner Clark. Unfortunately, Commissioner Clark has laryngitis to some degree too. He's fighting a head cold. He has tested negative, so that's good. But I believe he's going to ask Lisa Cox to do a quick overview of some of those things. We've been provided with so much of this material for the last month, as well as the public, that I believe everybody is up to speed on many of the questions or the concerns that they may have had. But I'm going to turn this over to Lisa Cox and to Brian Clark and let them kind of do a summation of what they have done here for the last month to compile this information. So Lisa, if you want to take over, fire away, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In December's meeting, no action was taken on amending the license regulations. These changes would be required to move forward with modernizing the licensing system. It is the intent of this presentation to summarize those amendments and give a brief history of what brings this action to the Commission for consideration. And let me see if I can share my screen. Awesome. The proposed amendments to the licensing regulations, there are three: 301 KAR 501, 301 KAR 5010, 301 KAR 5020. These regulation markups are in attachment A1 of your detailed agenda. The summary of those actions for 5001 would be to update the definitions, to remove antiquated language and accommodate a vendor-provided licensing service. In 301 KAR 5010, it's also to update the vendor language for consistency. 301 KAR 5020 is to update this section so that we are allowed to have a vendor-provided solution so that there is an ability for an issuance fee or operational fee, and also to alter the agent commission amount to a percentage of sale rather than a fixed per transaction amount. My apologies. So why is this important? This first came up because customers expected and demanded a modern convenience and features and functionality, such as a robust app to auto renew and notifications to enhance their purchase and participation experiences. So that's what was important to the customer. And you have to know that for us, the importance is our license and permits because they are the core of our funding. License and permits account for about half of the agency funding. They serve as state match to federal funds. For the most part, a grant is matched for every 75 cents of federal money we get. For the most part, we pay 25 cents out of our state funds. And also, the more licenses we sell, the more federal awards are available because the license counts go into the count for federal grants on the calculations that the federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife uses. Our operational costs are continually rising. The pension liability is well known. We have unfunded federal and other mandates, such as the Asian carp, CWD, all of those things factor into unexpected amounts that we have to pay for with our budget. And inflation, just like everybody, we have substantial increases in our fuel, our materials, and services. So we must ensure that there's ample and sustainable funding to conserve the fish and wildlife resources in order to provide a public opportunity in the future. We understand the importance of our licensed sales. In history, leading up to this, in 2019, I think Kevin mentioned, we discussed modernization needs in the Public Relations Committee, which was part of the commission, during 3 successive public meetings. They identified that we needed to update the website, we needed a robust agency app, and we also needed this third-party licensing system. That commission tasked the department's leadership and staff to pursue the next steps, which went into 2020, and staff performed that due diligence. We updated the agency website, we researched the feasibility of an app development, and we researched the third-party licensing and IT solutions. In order to do that research, we compiled a preliminary list of customer requested features and agency needs. We researched other state systems, functions, and features, and then we conducted a request for information, which is a formal request. An RFI was issued by the Finance Cabinet, and we had 2 vendors that came and presented. As part of that process, we made sure that there were attorneys that were available, and also there was somebody from finance there to make sure that it was only it's a very strict process to make sure that you're not talking about dollars, you're talking about things that different companies have to offer. And then we identified the necessary changes to regulations. In 2021, the staff continued their due diligence. They used interdisciplinary teams to further identify the agency and customer wish lists. They began drafting the needed and desired functions and features, and they also presented the proposed regulation amendments to the commission. This happened first in June of 2021. It was a new business item. There was a discussion item in September of 2021. And then last month, we had an action item that was tabled until further deliberation. So what is being proposed? We need to update the regulation language to match the current operational situation and just modernize the language. And the best thing to do is to look at that attachment A1 and understand that some of it is a little bit foreign. We need to update the licensing agent commission from a fixed 50 cents to a percentage of sale. Before we used to have a machine that we gave to them, and now they use their own paper if they print out licenses. And the max that this would be a 3% of the sale. And then we need to address future needs and to allow for those third-party licensing and IT vendor solutions. So the timeline for these changes begins now. It would take hopefully less than a year to get the regulations effective. The RFP would be finalized and issued in 2022. Bids would be evaluated. The contract would be awarded if a bid was successfully negotiated and accepted. And then in 2022 through 2023, you would look at the vendor licensing and IT solutions would be developed, tested, and deployed. So what are the remaining steps? Our first step is to amend the licensing regulation. We would have to finalize a draft of the RFP, and that would be sent to the Tourism Cabinet and to the Finance Cabinet to get a finalized RFP. The Finance Cabinet buyer actually issues the RFP, the request for proposal, and the Finance Cabinet buyer communicates with bidders. The bids would be evaluated, terms would be negotiated, and award a contract if there was a successful. And I think there's notes on here, and it's an important thing because if issuing an RFP does not commit the department to a vendor, it doesn't mean that we have to go down this road. We would only consider this if the negotiation resulted in a delivery of required functions and features and advantageous optional features as an acceptable price to cover the agent commission and operation fee that would not adversely affect our sales. So again, we're back to 3 amendments. look at the attachment A1. It's a matter of changing the definition of a vendor and allowing to have a third-party vendor solution and changing that fee for our agents to be from 50 cents to up to 3%. I would just say that we know how important it is for our license sales. It is our lifeblood. It not only for our state funds, but it's highly influences our federal funds. And but in order for us to take any sort of step forward, we have to have these regulation changes to consider. I appreciate y'all's attention.
Thank you, Lisa. Before I ask them if they have any questions, let me ask you a question. One of the main thing I know that some of the commissioners and even myself, as well as the department, got requests from stakeholders was they'd like a renewable license, so they don't get out and say, gosh, it's turkey season, I forgot to buy my license this year, to have some kind of renewable capability. If I understand it correctly, and maybe if someone from legal is with us too, if I haven't understood it correctly, if I understand this as it's been presented to me, if we keep this in-house, there is no way we can, by law, do a renewable license in-house. Is that correct? If we were to keep it like it is, we cannot legally do a renewable license. Is that correct?
I would let the attorney speak to that. I will say that I don't think we have the IT staff to definitely develop much more of a robust application than what we have. There are challenges because we can't necessarily even do a contract with Apple or the cell phones. So even if we could develop it in-house, I don't know that we would have the legal means to pursue that. But I think that's probably best answered by the attorneys.
Mr. Fields, are you with us today?
Yes, sir, I am.
Do you know what I'm referring to? That there's some law in the Commonwealth that keeps us from doing a renewable license, an automatic renewal. Oh, I see Sarah too. Isn't there something that keeps us from being able to do that in-house?
As far as automatic renewal, I'm not aware of anything. That's an issue that I haven't looked into. I would have to look into it if you'd like me to. I'm not sure if Ms. Cronin might have already looked into that.
I have not looked into that issue. I think there is some legislation pending on that issue. I have not looked at that legislation. And obviously it hasn't passed yet, but we can look into that for you. I think the issue has to do, and I'll defer to Mr. Fields, has to do with the hosting on, the Google Store and the Apple Store and all of that, because they do not have terms and conditions that we can agree to. As a government entity. So Stephen, feel free to jump in.
So
that's correct.
We are forbidden as an agency to contract, if you will, with Apple directly.
That's correct.
We're not prohibited. We cannot agree to their terms and conditions because they won't negotiate their terms and conditions.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
And so we could contract with them if they change their terms and conditions, but they don't. They're universal pretty much.
Okay. Thank you for answering those.
There's one other addition. I'll let Brian chime into that on storage of credit card numbers.
Brian, go ahead with that.
Yes,
you
sir.
can talk.
Forgive my voice. I hope I don't crack up too much here with my voice, but yes, that is correct. The guidance we've received in the past is that from a security and liability standpoint for the state, we would not take on that liability, even with a vendor in the state that is currently that we have available to us to be able to perform an auto renew, which is why we don't store that information currently. Otherwise, we would have done that in the past.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, other commissioners, you have questions for Lisa or for Brian? Who has a question here or a comment for them? Again, Brian, I want to thank you for all the material. I think the fact that there's either very few questions or very few public comments is you've made this available, and I know you made it available to the LKS and to answer some of their concerns or questions about what changes would be made. I believe they got a copy of of all the changes that would be made, and I have not heard any objection back from them. But thank you for making available all this information to the commission and to stakeholders about questions that they had. So I know it's taken a lot of your time, but thank
Mr. Chairman, may I just make one more comment?
Sure.
Hopefully one more comment. Do my best Froggy impression here. So we do have, for any folks who are just maybe hearing about this today for the first time, we do have on our website in the calendar of events, both the current detailed agenda, including markups of the regulations that Lisa provided a cursory or a abbreviated, a bullet kind of list of what the content of those is, which we've done again at the previous 3 commission meetings in June, September, and December of 2021. But we also have compiled in there for transparency a timeline of those discussions that both Kevin and Lisa alluded to, going back to 2019, 3 different committee meetings that were public and many stakeholders attended, but then also those commission meetings in 2021, including the links to the videos. If anyone wants to go back and listen to the content, it's essentially the same as being presented here today. And then also the discussion about it. And then I'll just conclude while I still have a little bit of voice and say, I commend the commission for whatever the outcome here, for your being transparent, for your being genuine, and listening to stakeholders. And again, going back to 2018-19, when these discussions first came up with commission members and then to the commission, the interest in advancing services and features and functions that the customers have been asking us for. And I've alluded to in the meetings, thousands of customers. That is not an exaggeration. We've had at shows and events over the last 12 at least years, but really beyond that, since apps were developed and other states jumped on this, going back in the late 2000s and early 2010s. And this is the direction that state fish and wildlife agencies are going. And so there are a lot of good success stories out there, and we obviously intend to benefit, to learn from their experiences and optimize our offerings going forward if we're able to proceed. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Any questions? Brian Mackey, I think you have a question for Lisa or Brian.
Deputy Commissioner Clark, to back up just a little bit ago, when we were talking about the automatic renewal, did I understand you to say that even if we had a contractor in Kentucky, we wouldn't be able to do automatic renewal?
Yeah, what I'm saying is we don't currently have a contractor in Kentucky who does this kind of license sales system. There are companies in other states. What I'm saying is we've looked into it previously, and it was not something we were allowed to pursue legally and from a liability standpoint. So yes, that's my understanding.
Other questions from commissioners for either Deputy Commissioner Clark or for Lisa Cox? Oh, y'all must have read all your material.
I did have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the regs, the current legislature is in session now. Are these regs going to be changed in this legislative session or the next one?
Good question.
They would be, the regulations would be filed as soon as we could finalize them with legal, obtain approval from the different steps. We have to have the commissioner's approval, the cabinet review and approval of the legal language, and then it's filed. It's reviewed by Legislative Research Commission (LRC) for proper legal language, and then also comportment or agreement with other regulations and statutes, including our own. And so it would go through that process, and then it would be reviewed by legislative committees. Yes, so it would be filed.
That wouldn't happen in this session.
No, sir. It's it's not dependent on the session. So we can file regulations anytime. So whether or not the legislature is in session, we can still file those, and they will begin working through that process.
Okay. All right.
Good question, Ralph. Any other questions from commissioners? Yes, Mr. Mackey.
It seems like, and it's not because I'm like against this or anything, but it just seems like this regulation change is moving a whole lot faster than some in the past. You know, when Commissioner Knott was on the commission, you know, he worked for reg changes to prevent snagging of walleye at the spill box pretty much his whole term. And then also with the goose zone changes, you know, and those are still setting somewhere, but yet when it comes to this, you know, it seems like we can push this one through pretty quick. Is there any particular reason why we kind of pick and choose how quick some of these reg changes get pushed through?
Mr. Clark, you want to address that? Well,
Sure.
I might remind Mr. Mackey, of course, I think this has been going on since 2019, or we've been talking about it since 2019, so it hadn't happened overnight, but.
No, sir. And I would, yes, sir. I would echo that. And I appreciate Mr. Mackey's concern there. And he's right. You know, sometimes these deliberations do take a long time. In the past, prior to our current three-step business process, the commission would typically hear, and this is going back 2018 and prior when committees were in place, the commission would hear a proposal that would come from staff, a commission member, a stakeholder group that had been vetted perhaps or whatever, to the commission, would hear in a committee meeting in 1 month a proposal, and then the very next month may vote to promulgate those regulation changes, be they amendments or new regulations. And so we intentionally, under Commissioner Storm's leadership and with the agreement of this commission, that it was a prudent process, a prudent step to slow down the process for regulation changes to allow public input, specifically to allow public input, but then also to allow more deliberation, adequate time for staff, stakeholders to become aware and do research on topics and then make an informed decision going forward. And so from my standpoint in a career with the agency, I think the commissioner's leadership and the commission's adopting this 6-month minimum process for most regulation changes, except for emergencies, has been a very welcome change. And early in the process, we received very positive feedback about that change from a lot of stakeholders, including members, leaders within different league organizations, League of Kentucky Sportsmen organizations. So I would say it's certainly a valid question. I would say we've, in this case, followed our due diligence. And as Chairman Kleiner alluded to, this is sort of the end product of really 3 years worth of work. So this has been a very deliberate, even much more deliberate than the normal regulation process to lead us to where we are today. It's a good question.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Morgan.
I would like to make a motion that we pass this action item that's before us today. Update regulations related to license, insurance, and administrative to enhance customer service, improve consistency, and accommodate modernization efforts in the current and future license delivery solutions. Specific changes requested include Amendment 301 KAR 5:001 by updating definitions to remove antiquated language and accommodate licensed vendors provided service. Amend 301 KAR 5:010 by updating vendor language for consistency. Amend 301 KAR 5:020 to update antiquated language and add vendor provided solution language and insurance fees and operational fees language. Alter agent commission amount to be based on a percentage of sales rather than a fixed per transaction amount.
Is there a second to that motion? And if there is, I want to remind everybody, we still have time for discussion because I think there may be other discussion that wants to occur. So we still have time for other discussion if a second is made to that motion. I have a motion on the floor. I have a second from Josh Lillard. Now it's time for any discussion. And I believe, Brian Mackey, you may have put your hand up about the time Mr. Morgan got the floor. You have discussion on that?
I just have a statement I'd like to read.
Yes, sir.
This is, some of it is my opinions and beliefs. A lot of it is things I've heard from sportsmen, not only in my district, but from across the state. So I'll just read this and then I'll be done. Since the December 3rd meeting, I've had multiple email exchanges with Commissioner Storm and Deputy Commissioner Clark pertaining to the third-party vendor sales. I tried to go as deep in the weeds as possible on this issue. At the December 3rd meeting, this topic was discussed at great length, and at times the discussion seemed to go in circles. Because of this and a lot of unanswered questions, I made a motion to table this action item, gather more information, and discuss it at a later date. If you watched the meeting, you know that my motion died without a second, and shortly thereafter, another motion very similar to mine was made and immediately got a second and passed unanimously. The reasons I've been given for the need to go to a new system have been the need for an app and benefits in an app, staffing issues, cost to the department for selling licenses themselves, churn rate in customers, and the need for auto renewal to combat said churn rate. The common arguments I've received are app third-party vendor, automatic renewal, customers being able to check game when they might not have cell service for current telecheck or online check, and a hard card license like a credit card. Current regulations say a hunter has until midnight the day of harvest or midnight the day of recovery to check said game animal through telecheck or online check. So how important is this option really on an app? If a customer doesn't have cell service, an app will not upload information to the server until a person has cell service. Current regulations require a hunter to fill out a harvest log before moving an animal in the field, and this regulation is not changing. Can you write on a plastic card with a pencil or ink pen and do this in the field for your harvest log? Hunters will still need a pen and paper. I've reviewed several other state agencies that offer apps. The best I can tell currently, there are about 11 states right now. If you look at the reviews for most of these state agency apps, the most common comments made about them is what does the app really do? Because when I click on it, it sends me directly to the state website. The other common argument I hear is without cell signal or internet service, most of the apps do not work. These are multiple reviews from several different states. Staffing is another issue that I've heard for the need for a third-party vendor. The other day, I asked Commissioner Storm for staffing levels from 2018 to 2021. The numbers I was given for end of 2018 was 406 full-time staff, 28 part-time. The end of 2019 was 407 full-time and 30 part-time. The end of 2020 was 420 full-time and 27 part-time. And at the end of last year, 412 full-time and 41 part-time. To me, these numbers show a fairly stable staff and possibly slight increases in staffing. Yet we have staffing issues. Cost, currently KDFWR pays point of sale retailers 50 cents per license sold. For 2020, the cost of the department for that was $214,389.50. The department pays 2.75% for credit card transactions. That cost for 2020 was $593,546. The current proposed state budget for 2022-2023 has over 61 million in restricted funds and over 22 million in federal funds. So that's over $83 million. I'm sorry, but to me, when you run a customer-based business, and that's what KDFW are, sometimes it costs money to provide a customer-based service. If this is all about money and savings, if we go to a third-party system, will we immediately eliminate some job positions? Website. The KDFWR updated the website this past spring. Kentucky Interactive runs the Kentucky state government websites. They also provided services to KDFWR and helped with the website update at no cost to the department. I and many others have the department website saved on our phone with an icon. So currently my phone has the department logo on it. I can click on it and it sends me immediately to the website. My phone has the ability to do everything I need to do right now. Auto renewal, increased license sales. It's been stated that a third-party vendor will be motivated to sell more licenses since they will be paid for each one they sell. The product we sell is only needed by people that are required to have it by KRS. We are not selling magazine subscriptions, life insurance, or gold futures. No vendor will sell a hunting or fishing license to someone that is not required to have that license. It has been discussed that through the automatic renewal, there may be opportunities where customers inadvertently purchase a license when they may not need it that year. I do not think that is good business. Churn. In the business marketing world, churn refers to the turnover rate in customers or customers that don't come back repeatedly year after year. In business and marketing, churn is related mostly to luxury items and disposable income. Good examples of product related to churn are smartphones, TVs, magazine subscriptions. The product we sell is hunting and fishing license. Once again, the only people that buy our product are people that are required to do so. I know several people that don't own land, they don't lease land, and they don't hunt public land. If those people don't get an invite from someone like me or others, they usually will not buy a license year after year. They may only purchase a license 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 5. When we say that auto renewal will fix this issue, are we not just saying that we're going to possibly trick someone into selling something they do not need? Recent research I've done shows Kentucky's hunter license churn rate is about 15%. That's half of what Wisconsin's is, and they offer an app. I've heard some say by the department not incurring direct costs and selling license, that money previously spent can be put toward other things such as habitat research and WMAs. It's been reported from January 2019 to July of 2020, we have about an additional 20 million in the bank right now. If that's the case, why haven't we done things at our WMAs, hired job vacancies or other things?
Mackie, I want to interrupt you for a minute. Please keep your conversation pertinent to this issue, not our WMAs and other issues similar.
This is directly related to things I've been told about the third-party vendor solutions.
Well, I don't believe WMA issues are. So please try to sum this up or confine this to the issues that are before us with this motion. And we can discuss our WMAs and how we spend money on WMAs at another time, sir.
I feel as many do, if something's not broke, why try to fix it? We keep saying the current system we have is broke. Many say they don't see that. I have 8 vacancies in law enforcement right now in my district. That's something that's broke, and we don't seem to be doing anything to try to fix that issue. I'll end there.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. Are there other comments or discussions concerning this issue?
Yes, Dr. Kleiner.
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to say a few things. I was on the original Public Relations Committee. I've said that before publicly in 2019. Part of the initial task or the committee that started the modernization and licensing. And I feel like that, you know, it's moved along, things have changed, we've gone to a different system. And it's absolutely true that We have presented this. We have put it on the agenda. It's gone through the process, and which leads us to a point where we are now. Lost my train of thought there. Yeah, we in our last meeting, we beat this around quite a bit, and Mr. Mackey or Commissioner Mackey did make a motion that died on the floor. I felt like it was important that at the time we not wait until March to make this, but we move it to a special called meeting. So while being involved initially from the start and also making this motion, I feel responsible to a degree for where we are. I represent the 3rd district, and I've heard loud and clear from my district multiple times about this. And my district received the agendas. This item was on there. I'm not sure how much discussion in the districts occurred, but we can say that it's true. But there's a huge amount of chatter about not being aware of this issue. And I want to publicly say that it's been there. It's been talked about. Some of the people that are making an issue about it now were in some of the original meetings, and I think we brought it to the floor. I think that Mr. Mackey may have had a great point in that last meeting, just because of all the chatter and the blow up at the end of the day with this issue. And I'm torn about this vote today. I'm not sure how I want to pose it, but I know that many feel like they haven't been heard, but at the same time, many feel like they have been heard. I've got positive comments along the way, and I'm just in a difficult spot with moving forward or delaying. So I know there's a motion on the floor, and I'm not sure if we can amend that motion. And I hate to throw a curve here, but and I want to follow protocol, but I'm thinking that if we delay this till the March meeting, it would give our constituents time to really say what they want to say.
That wouldn't be an amendment. You'd just be down vote. It just have to be a down vote. It would be an amendment at this point. It'd be a down vote. Commissioner Swallows. Mr. Morgan, do you have a comment?
The motion's on the floor. It is as I made it. And I say, let's call for the question.
Well, actually, I have a comment too.
Oh, okay. Dr. Floyd, go ahead, sir.
I have used a modernized system like we're talking about. I used it this fall when I was hunting in Tennessee. I was hunting in an area with no Wi-Fi, no internet connection. I harvested a buck. I was able to check that buck in, get my confirmation number, put that buck in my truck and take it to a deer processor. And at nowhere along the way did I have internet or Wi-Fi. I gave that confirmation number to that processor, donated that deer to Tennessee Hunters for the Hungry, and I was done. Okay. However, let me say this. I have presented this proposal to modernize our current archaic licensing system to multiple of my constituents, multiple ones. I explained our IT challenges, our requests from customers for a more user-friendly system, and the utility of some of the features of the modern system that people would have if they allowed us to get one. They're not biting. They're just not. In my line of work as a physician, I often see folks make choices that may not be in their best interest. I believe there is no doubt a modernized licensing system where you can check in game without having to have internet or Wi-Fi would be beneficial to us. I can't convince folks of that. Over the years, I've served on multiple boards. I can count on one hand the number of times I've voted against a proposal that I know would be beneficial to the organization that I'm serving. But I strongly feel that I need to abide by the wishes of my constituents, and therefore I can't support this proposal. Abraham Lincoln said that we eventually end up with a kind of government that we deserve. Maybe that's true, but I think it needs to be government by the people and for the people. And the people that I represent don't want this. So I can't support it.
Other comments, other commissioners? Otherwise, I'll call for the question. Mr. Fisher.
I was just going to give my feedback. I think mine's adverse to Dr. Floyd, and Dr. Floyd, I appreciate you doing what you have to do to represent your people. Constituents in my area that I've talked to are for it, but I want to give some feedback from them because they are about user friendliness. They want it to be something that has added value. And so as we go down this road, one of the things Commissioner Mackey mentioned is an app that didn't work without cell service. So you can have apps that go both ways. If we're gonna go down this road, it has to be an added convenience. The consumer has to feel like they're getting something for the additional money. Most people I talked to said that $2 or $3 is not too much money, that they throw more at that at a volley of ducks nowadays with the prices of ammunition or losing a fishing lure. That's a trip out onto the water. So they're not concerned about the expense, but they just want to make sure that what they get for it is added value.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Other comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll just add simply, one of the concerns that was raised since the December meeting or shortly before was from stakeholders and commission members was how do sports people provide input? And so in addition to comments to commission members, emailing comments to the public affairs email address that we have, and letters and different ways that people can always contact us. If there are features or functions that sports people would like to recommend or request, if this goes forward, we welcome those. People can email those suggestions about specific things they've seen in other states or they would like to see. We just request that be done as soon as possible, because if you all do make these regulation changes, we will continue working on development of the RFP and then working with finance and legal and so on to get that issued. So by all means, this is, again, it was driven originally not as a revenue tool primarily, but as a means of improving customer service to modernize what we do and make it sustainable into the future. So please, contact us. You can call us at 800-858-1549. Request that the information specialist send to the commissioner's office. They can send it to me. Features or functions that they would like to see if we develop an app and licensing and IT solutions going into the next generation. And they could also email that to fw.publicaffairs@ky.gov. And we absolutely will. Several of us tend that. We will look at that and make sure those are sent to the team that will be working on an RFP if this goes forward. Chairman, also, I will defer to you whether you think this will be helpful. I have a statement. Our IT manager, the branch manager over our IT branch, which currently is half-staffed of what it has been historically because we have not been able to recruit and keep good staff. We have an excellent staff, but we have few currently and there's been a lot of turnover, except for people we've had for several years or longer. He's been with us for 21 years. Most of our historic IT staff were with us for a career, but that is no longer the case with IT. It's very difficult to keep people more than a year, 2 years, 3 years. They get experience, they move on. And that's not what we need. We need people that know our system, can manage it, or they have the financial incentive to make it work and make it functional. So I have a statement from him. Happy to read it if I can get through it with my voice. But if it's not necessary, I have indicated that our IT staff unanimously support this effort. Thank you.
Well, is it directly pertinent to the motion that's been made concerning the amendment and third-party vendor?
Yes, sir. It addresses some of the comments or questions. For example, some of Mr. Mackey's and some of the other ones from stakeholders. So again, we'll defer to you. Happy to read it if you'd like for me to. It basically indicates some of the rationale for the our IT branches.
Let me ask the other commissioners if anybody objects to your reading of that at this point. If anybody does object to that, please voice that now. If you object to the reading of the IT director about this issue. Then if I hear no objections, then Mr. Clark, go ahead and read that. And then Commissioner Farrell, you're next in line. I noticed that you wanted to speak. So after Mr. Clark finishes reading that, we'll welcome your input. So.
Thank you, sir. I'll try to be as concise and clear as I can. This is from Chip Quarles, the manager of our IT branch. I am the current IT manager for Fish and Wildlife and have been with the department for over 21 years and am nearing retirement. I have recommended and fully support the RFP process and transition to a third-party license system. In my opinion, this RFP process and a move to a third-party hosted solution is the most important IT project since the current in-house license system, KDSS or Kentucky Direct Sales System, was implemented in 1995. That's the year I started with the department. I remember that development. That's my words. When the current system was first implemented in 1995, Kentucky was one of the first states to move to electronic licensing. Several years later, Kentucky was one of the first states to offer internet sales. At that time, IT staffing within state government was stable. Smartphones didn't exist, and most processes still involved paper. Today, hiring and retaining IT staff is a major challenge within state government. Younger IT employees with more mobile retirement options and the potential of higher private sector salaries are harder to recruit and retain, causing more turnover. In-house IT systems require more time for new employees to get acclimated with the systems to provide adequate support. This has the potential to become a serious support issue with the main source of revenue for the department. I can't stress enough how important knowledgeable IT staff are when running an in-house system as critical as our license system is. Our existing programmers are very capable, and I will say they absolutely are. We have top-notch folks. That's my words. But Chip goes on, but keeping them may be difficult. Due to government policies which prevent Kentucky government agencies from publishing apps in-house and the expense and scarcity of qualified mobile app developers, the department is not able to create the smartphone mobile app experience that customers expect. We do have a website that works with mobile devices. In other words, it's a mobile-friendly website, but it does not offer the offline functionality, as Dr. Floyd alluded to, that a true mobile app can deliver. Auto-renew functionality is also not feasible with our current in-house system because we must use a payment provider that provides payment services for all of state government and can't create a seamless auto-renew process. Many state fish and wildlife agencies have moved to a third-party hosted license solution with great success for customers and more efficient agency processes as well. And one thing we haven't talked about here is law enforcement. There are law enforcement benefits, and there are features we haven't expressly addressed that would be built into an app. Those would be required functions. Chip concludes with, we would have the advantage of choosing a vendor that has a proven track record with multiple states to deliver the department services for our next generation of licensing. Again, Chip Quarles, manager of our IT branch. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Mr. Farrell, floor is yours, sir.
Yes. Since I'm the newbie here, I see both sides, all the issues and everything that's going on. I heard one of the commissioners say, we work for the people, for our people in our district. And a lot of them feel like this is kind of being, I don't want to use the term shoved down their throats, but I do realize and I understand the need to update our system. And that is going to happen, whether some of us like it or not. I mean, everything is technology driven. It's going to be convenient, as one of the other commissioners had mentioned. So I see the direction that the department wants to head. And I think it's a good thing. But my concern is right now, is this the right time to do this, to increase prices? I heard one of the commissioners also speak about what shotgun shells cost and what a mega bass lure costing $28. So most people can absorb a price increase, but it has to be also done at the right time. Property taxes are going to increase 40%. This is going to increase the inflation rate right now. It's going straight up. It's not going at an angle. It's going straight up. So I do think that we need to update our system. I'm just concerned about the timing of this issue because it's a hard sell with what everyone is going through right now. So that's all I have to say. I just, 3% is 3%. And it's not going to be up to 3%. It probably will be 3%. So we keep saying up to. So they're not going to start off at 1 and then jump to 3. It's probably going to start at 3 and increase from that point on. So that's just my thought. I've talked to several people where I do work at and just, shooting it around a little bit and just talking to see how people felt. And trust me, I talked to a lot of sportsmen. And, I just feel like now is, I don't know, not a good time. But that's just my opinion. I'm the newbie here, like I said, and I do feel like it's going to happen. I just don't know when.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. Anybody else have any comments before we put the question? Brian, you've spoken once. Hang on, let me see if there's any others, because if you're going to speak again, I've got to give everybody an opportunity to speak who has not yet spoken. Anybody else before we put the question to you? Brian, go ahead.
I just had a question on if they could explain like the timeline this would look like. So if we pass this today, you're going to have a reg change process. I'm assuming the RFP can't even go out until the reg change goes all the way through. So we're going to have
Yeah, that's a good question, Brian Fisher. Mr. Clark, you want to address that of the timeline?
Yes, sir, it's an excellent question. It does have, direct relevance to Mr. Farrell's concern, because yes, this would probably be a 2-year process. So we're probably looking at this being, activated in license year 2024. So we're, Lisa alluded to the timeframe of 2022 to 23. This would be regulation amendment promulgation, development of RFP, vetting of the RFP, the Finance Administration Cabinet taking that process over, again, to address some of the concerns I brought up previously. This is not something we drive. We are involved. We set all the parameters within, legal constraints and all the functions and features that we want to see required and optional that are desired. And then we put it out there with certain sideboards, such as the 3% maximum on a licensed agent commission.
So
Finance Administration would basically run the process then. So they would assign a buyer to it, and that buyer then receives the bids, communicates with bidders or vendors, and then works with our evaluation team, staff evaluation team, and their members from COT and Finance Administration Cabinet to evaluate based on those objective criteria and award the contract if there's one that's, suitable, acceptable to the department. As Lisa mentioned, if again, to Mr. Farrell's point, if someone came in with a bid that was, too much money, or if all the bids were going to adversely affect pricing or sales, we would reject them and we would just continue on for the time being. But to Chip's comment, we literally have had 6 staff historically in IT. We currently have 3 staff and we have a part-time contractor. And one of our staff, the manager of the branch, is retiring. And I will say retiring, he could change his mind and not decide to go in the time frame he is, but it's very, very soon. And so we are going to be scrambling. And so we would have loved to have done this 2 years ago when the commission said, hey, tell us what we need to do next. But we literally had to do the due diligence to be able to get to the point we are now. So if we wait a year or 2 years, we're going to be, again, another 2 years down the road, probably from deploying a system. And so we're going to be further and further behind the 8 ball.
So if we pass it today and then that time change of reg, will we have the ability to send out a customer survey to the email database we have and ask them like what features or things like that and get their feedback?
We should be able to do that. We have kind of a list already built, as at least alluded to. We can verify with finance that would be acceptable. Again, we're subject to the Finance Administration Cabinet procurement laws and policies, FAP. So we could verify that is acceptable or legal, since we haven't officially, finished an RFP or finalized an RFP. But they do have very tight restrictions. After our last commission meeting, we had IT encouraged us to have a call with one of the directors in finance, the division director, who oversees this process for the IT solutions the state procures through RFP. And she cautioned us about communications on specifics. But if we made it open-ended to customers, like we've allowed people to email us and make suggestions, that may be okay. So we can absolutely verify that that's okay with finance, and then do that and maybe issue it for 2 weeks or a month or something like that, and give customers an opportunity to provide those suggestions. Excellent suggestion, Brian. Mr.
Mackey, go ahead. I'm trying to sum this up if we can.
This is for Deputy Commissioner Clark, just so we're kind of clear, because this is where a lot of the stakeholders get confused and concerned. When we talk about a possible 3% commission for the agent, when we say agent, we're talking about the point of sale retailer, Walmart, local gun, bait shop. The third party vendor down the road, if we do this, they're going to be charging a fee also.
Yes, so you're correct, Mr. Mackey, and that's why we've tried to specify the license agent commission, and it is currently specified in regulation, and also the vendor provided solution. So the vendor would essentially take on the role of what the department currently does in terms of all the IT infrastructure, transactions, and all that we do behind the scenes, and then the retail side, the license agent would continue. That's still available to the customer, but they would receive a maximum of a 3% commission instead of a 50 cents per license or permit transaction. It's an excellent distinction. And I would say also there is the possibility currently for licensed vendors to add or surcharge a customer for credit card fees, processing fees, and so on to cover their costs. Some do, some don't. But what this would do also is standardize the price. So every customer, whether you buy from a licensed agent retailer or you buy from the department online through this licensing system, would pay the same amount. So it'd be very predictable for the customer. And it's kind of like some states have built in the cost of these fees, the license agent fee and the vendor fee, in their license fee. and some show it explicitly as a transaction or operational fee at the end. You know, when you purchase this, here's another $2 or $3, whatever.
I just want to make sure people that may be watching understand that when we say, you know, possible 2.5%, 3.5% agent fee or whatever, I don't want people to think, okay, that's all the additional cost is going to be. That's just one of two parts of the additional cost.
Yes, sir. And it is, again, I realize some folks have some heartburn about the fact that we can't specify, you know, a litany of, okay, here is what is going to be included in this new licensing system, and there are other things. Again, I mentioned law enforcement. There is a dimension of that that we would want to have built in to the app or into a law enforcement app to help our law enforcement division do what they need to do and verify licenses and so on. There are other features that we will want to include that some stakeholders have asked for that we have not publicly discussed for the sake of the RFP process. And so again, it's not that we're trying to hide anything. We're just trying to protect that process, because if one vendor indicates they've got, you know, they've been watching all the commission meetings and they have all the details, and hypothetically, and then other vendors didn't have all the details, so to speak, they could, you know, cry foul. And so that's why we've tried to say, okay, we have some general features and functions we want to address. There are many others in our list of wish list, and we're going to put those out and see what vendors can do at what price points. But the second aspect of that is the actual fee amounts. And so, like Mr. Farrell pointed out, the exact amount will be subject to bidding. So there will be competition here. We will have the agent fee as a maximum, and then we will see what the other folks, other vendors want to, are willing to do, what services at what prices. And then we'll try to come up with the best package possible at the best price, and then move forward if we have a good suite of bids.
Don't we already have a law enforcement app for Fish and Wildlife?
We do. It's not. We have it's simply a report a poacher. So it's not an integrated app for law enforcement that works together with our licensing system. It's a good point. We do. It's basically just for reporting poaching.
Any other comments before we put the question? I want to say I appreciate all of the insight from all the commissioners and their representation of their districts and people that they've talked to. This has taken a lot of consideration. So thank you all for your input, both positive and negative, on this issue. I'm going to put the question to you at this point, since there's no further discussion. We have a motion and a second that on page 2 of our action items under licensing, the motion is to amend 301 KAR 5001, to amend 301 KAR 5010, and amend 301 KAR 5020 with those 3 additions of vendor provided issuance fees and alter agent commission, as it is written in attachment 1 or the action items on page 2. Mr. Secretary, would you call the roll vote?
Commissioner Floyd?
No.
Commissioner Floyd votes no. Commissioner Fisher?
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher votes yes. Commissioner Swallows?
Yes.
Commissioner Swallows votes yes. Commissioner Mackey?
No.
Commissioner Mackey votes no. Commissioner Lillard?
Yes.
Commissioner Lillard votes yes. Commissioner Farrell? Commissioner Farrell?
Commissioner Farrell, we cannot hear you, sir.
No.
Commissioner Farrell votes no. Commissioner Horn?
Yes.
Commissioner Horn votes yes. Commissioner Morgan, I vote yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 1, 2, 3 noes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Then the motion carries. I do again want to say I appreciate both the negative and the positive comments. I am in great hopes, that historically, in the 2 years that we have for this issue to come to fruition, that we'll look back and feel like we have made the correct decision, even with the negative comments, even with, and they're good comments, they're concerned comments, and I greatly appreciate the concern of the commissioners representing their constituents in that there's some unanswered questions that they may have, but I am in great hopes that this motion that is now carried in 2 years, we'll look back and see that we have done the right thing, and our stakeholders will also seem the same. Mr. Fisher, you have a comment before we?
Yeah, just for Deputy Commissioner, I would like you to try to find out what we're allowable to do on a survey. And while the reg changes are in process with state legislature, if we could get something out within the RFP legal process to the stakeholders to get their feedback on this, what features, and just a general consensus before an RFP goes out.
Absolutely, we'll do that and let you all know, the entire body, and I'll copy the commissioner with a response. We'll say some of the backstory as far as hearing from thousands of customers desiring some of these features. We did a social media, it's unscientific, but we did a social media survey or poll in the early 2010s, and I don't remember the exact year, and because it's dated, I didn't try to bring that data to you, but probably 2013, something like that. But we asked some similar things like, features that people wanted, such as purchase of a license, check, telecheck of game within the app. In other words, without internet service, when many states were moving towards having an app and having this kind of a service. And so we know there was a very strong response to that, a lot of interest. And since then, we've, again, had a steady stream, share with some of you all, even in our surveys, unsolicited. When people have open-ended comments, we'll get several comments in every survey we do. We do several each year where people say, when are you guys going to get an app? When are you going to, create a system where we can, check our game, buy our licenses in the field? And I will say, I personally, both on the side of checking game and on the side of taking people afield. I'm an active mentor. I know many of you all are as well. This last hunting season, this current hunting season, I had 2 mentees afield with me, and the intention was for the youth to harvest a deer, and she did. And then immediately we had another deer come in, and the father, who didn't have a current license, wanted to buy a license. Thankfully, we had one bar, and we were able to do that while this deer was, we could see it and it'd come in view and then come into view. We bought his license. He was able to harvest a deer. But many of the places you all hunt, that I hunt and fish, we don't have internet service. And so this can be a game changer for a lot of people. So thank you for your support.
Thank you. 2 important things before I ask for a motion to adjourn. Let me remind you of 2 important dates that are coming up. On March 4th, we have tentatively set for our next full commission meeting. If someone cannot make that, please contact the department or me or Deputy Chairman or Vice Chairman Horn and tell us that is a conflicting date for you. The other date is 1 month from today is Valentine's Day. And I want to remind you all to keep out of trouble with your significant other. Don't forget that February 14th is coming up, so that you don't appear at our next meeting with a possible black eye. So please remember that on your calendar. I'll entertain a motion to dismiss our meeting. And again, I want to thank you all for your attendance this morning.
I'll make a motion.
Yes, motion to dismiss by Josh Lillard. Is there a second to that motion? A second by Brian Fisher. All in favor, please signify by verbal aye, or first verbal aye.
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 Unanimous. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
See you guys.